Well, I get a chance to both close out the year and start the year. So, I mean, either you can be regretful or you can enjoy it. So, and the other thing too is surprisingly, what I talked about last week and what I talk about this week will actually be linked, although at first I didn't think it was that way. Wow. I want you to slow down and think about this last year. What a wild ride. What an unpredictable time. I don't know about you. I go between being stunned, shocked. I mean, there's a range of responses, but none of it is like, well, I saw that coming. And guess what? The year ahead has more of the same. I have no idea what's coming at us. And on top of it, we got AI to lie to us. So, yeah, what a cool deal, right? I can make an AI version of myself and put it online. Everybody will think I'm far better looking than I am, for one thing. I don't know most people. Does anybody ever do a profile online and make themselves worse? Have you ever heard of that? I never have. One good thing, I hope you like my shirt. There is a wonderful term in Spanish. If you don't know more than one language, this is a great advertisement because you learn things that you wouldn't know otherwise. The term in Spanish is called estrenar. Okay? And literally what it means is to wear something for the first time. Okay? And so now we get it, right? And the cool thing in Spanish, in the Spanish Hispanic world, is it's like, this is when the ladies all come out with their new stuff, right? Be whatever it is, they'll show up, the following week in the church or whatever, and that you go, wow, yeah, I got it for Christmas. So that's a cool thing. So my wife has, as a number of people say, most of my taste is in my mouth, but thankfully my wife buys great things for me. So you may compliment her for my shirt. But anyhow, that has nothing to do with where I'm going next. What do you do in a crazy world? Where do you go to from here? What we said last week, in a certain sense, was completely counter to anything natural that I would do. Because Jesus said that the key to blessing is washing feet. Say, what? He literally said, if you do these things, you will be blessed. And I'm looking at this, and in fact, interestingly enough, he said it to the community of faith. The second thing I would like to point out, as I begin, there is a dramatic clash in John 13, because literally heaven and hell run smack into each other. Satan in Judas and in the fulfillment of his plan is completely present at that time when it starts out. And so Jesus is ministering to Judas as Judas is getting ready to be taken over by Satan and send him to the cross. And yet there he is. But the interesting thing is, if you look at that, it says, if you do these things, you will be blessed, but not all of you. I think one of the things that he was saying, it came out in our Sunday school class today, is you will not receive this blessing if you simply do these things without God's hand upon your life. Now, we were talking about it and, being humble and that kind of thing. And the reality is, let's face it, servant leadership is now a big deal. You can move things up by moving down and all this kind of jazz. There are principles in the Bible that anybody can do. And they work. Why? Because they're true. However, God adds an entirely different dimension to what's going on. Because fundamentally what he is talking about when he washed their feet, and this is kind of us stepping into, is what it is you are dialed into the other person. You have built a relationship in such a way that you actually know how to reach out to them. And it may even, and often is, if it's their deepest need, it may even be a little embarrassing for both of you. Right? Look at Peter. What did Peter say? Don't you wash my feet. Why? Because it was embarrassing. Now, dirty feet was a common event. It's not like, bro. It was like, wait a second, you are the head of the whole crowd, and you are doing things. And maybe in his mind it's going, I should have been willing. I don't know what was going on in his head. But the reality is there are two sides to service. One is giving and one is receiving. And sometimes receiving is the harder one of the two. Because we have to admit there really is a need. And we have to admit that, I really do need your help. And for many of us, that's a very ugly thing to embrace. But having said all that, I started walking down this road. In fact, if you really want to hear a great one, the key term is humility. Humility simply means I see you as important. It literally means lowering myself. Really tall people look over the crowd. When I was in Guatemala, I worked with, for a while, I worked with the Indians, and literally I'm about a foot taller than almost all of them. We would stand up in the church service and I would see little heads all over the place. Okay? The little kids knew what everybody would, what kind of dress they had on or whatever, the suit. All I saw was the top of their heads. So when you get low, you see much more clearly. It's fascinating to me in 1 Peter 5, there are two verses that stand out when it talks about this. And what God says is this: humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you at the proper time. And the linked verse is, casting all your cares upon him, because he cares for you. You see, the reason why I exalt myself is because I got issues. I got problems. I have needs, and I have to meet them. That's the way I see life. When I was starting this out, I wrote a few things down. When we talk about serving like Jesus, humility is so stinking hard. I hate to say it, but anytime, get in the bathroom some morning and look at the mirror and take a really deep look. In other words, don't look at the superficial face that's in there. Look down into the heart. Guess what? My ego's there just beating away. Seriously looking at you as more. I need to be important just to take care of my own life. I need to be important because if not, I have to feel like everybody else is better than I am. And I don't want to be a bug in the midst of the rest of the world. Another thing around is I need to take care of myself because it's crazy out there. It is, once again, people are really in it. Try driving around Houston. You tell me. If you are like, whether, as we call it, the LOL driver, every guy knows what that means, but the people who think that you're actually supposed to drive at the speed limit with the proper distance from the car in front of you. Have you ever seen those people? They're the ones everybody's honking at. Get up there, come on, close up. And every time they start to get the appropriate distance, those of you who are really good drivers, as soon as you start to get the right distance, what happens? Somebody cuts in front of you. Fill the space, man. I hate to tell you, part of my training was New York City. New York City says this. Number one, 4 inches in front of the car in front of you is probably enough space. Because if you move at all, somebody's going to get in there. And secondly, every car in New York City has got dings and dents and you wouldn't believe it. And I found out why. Do you know how you park in New York City? By touch and feel. You see, here's the deal. If in New York, okay, this is for free. In New York, if there's a space and you pull up properly trying to do in, what the guy will do behind you, he will pull up so you can't. So he can take the space away from you. So here's the maneuver in New York City. You got to do it just like that. And the other problem is it's very difficult to judge distances. So you go rump, bang. And then you go bang, 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 bang until you get in the right place. Welcome to New York. And do you know what? People today are doing it to us all the time. They're cutting in and they're banging and they're doing all these things around us. They're canceling us and they're cutting us. And so let's face it, folks. I got to be out there fighting for it. I got to be out there on top of my game. Now, how can I care about your stuff when I have to care about my stuff? Huh? That's my question. So as we start out into this passage, that was kind of one of my big issues because, let's get real, folks. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. Casting all your cares. And literally what it means is, it's kind of like you make a laundry bundle out of your cares. It doesn't mean go, there's a care, there's a problem. It literally means take the whole thing, throw it. How in the world can I do that? And let me point you to an unusual passage. Most people don't go there. Hebrews is not, I would not ask for a show of hands. How many people read Hebrews for recreation? Right. Now, the thing is, it is a book written to believers on how to live a life. And here's the problem. Being a Christian at that time had suddenly become very unpopular. Up to that point in time, they were kind of Jews. And the Roman world said, we'll put you under the Jewish name because if you were not a recognized religion, Rome treated you as an atheist, as an outcast. And about the time that Hebrews was written, Christianity had been divided out from Jewish. So now suddenly you no longer had the umbrella of protection. You no longer had the social graces. In fact, you could be outed at any time and you could be excluded at any time if they associated with Christians. So a number of Christians went, you know what? That's a pretty rotten deal. I could lose my job. I could lose my friends. They might keep me from shopping down at the local Jewish supermarket, and they would. So they started saying, hey, what we need to do is kind of do the undercover thing. We need to pretend that we're Jews while we're really Christians. And the letter was really written to say, wait a second, what you really need to do is live like a Christian in the middle of the mess. What do we do? Okay, so let's start out first in Hebrews 4. And here's the idea. And the idea is this. How do I internally handle life when it's so tumultuous? And how do I step into an even more difficult life? Because I can barely keep myself afloat as it is. I titled this message For the Rest of Your Life. And I love words. I mean, anybody who hasn't been around me very long probably knows that. But I love words, and there's a thing called a double entendre. I'm sorry we don't have our French family here. It literally means two meanings, double meaning. And when you talk about for the rest of your life, there's really two words there, right? There's one word, and we used it for our title slide, which is this, the lawn chair in front of the lake, and everything's nice, and you relax back, and you have your not your double martini, but your big lemonade next to you. You're just breezing, man. It is chilling, right? That's cool. The other part of it is for the rest of your life, which means all that remains. And in all honesty, I want you to do this both ways. I want both meanings to be real as we walk through here, because my prayer is that this will become a lifestyle. And that from this time forward, you'll be able to live differently. And at the same time, you'll figure out what the problem is. So what he says here, he starts out Hebrews 4, 1 through 7. Therefore, let us fear if, while a promise remains of entering his rest, any one of you may seem to come short of it. For indeed, we have had good news preached to us, just as they also. But the word they heard did not profit them, because it was not united by faith in those who heard. For we believed entered that rest, just as he said, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, although his works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he said somewhere concerning the seventh day, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And again in this passage, they shall not enter my rest. Therefore, since it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly had good news preached to them failed to enter because of disobedience, he again fixes a certain day saying through David, after so long a time, just as he said before, today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your heart. I believe that God is offering in this passage a dimension of life that most of us lack. It's called rest. And what he's saying is there is a way to get it. In fact, the curious thing to me is he shows it by his own example. If, in a certain sense, I don't know, I don't know whether God was, with the word busy ever applies to God. I mean, is God ever really busy? No, I think he's cool through the whole thing, everything he does, right? Can you imagine light, earth, stars? You know, he just words it out. But in a certain sense, he worked. He put all this stuff together. On the seventh day, it was done. On the seventh day, he rested. Now, that doesn't mean that God worked so hard that he was tired and he got his pillow out and had a nap. What it means is he just sat back and enjoyed it. God just, hey, it's very good. Maybe he went, isn't that cool? Maybe that's why we had to come along and go, yeah, it is. So anyhow, that's God. He rested. There is another dimension that he shows to us. But notice what he's saying. He's talking about the nation of Israel. Remember, we all know the big story, right? Mo and the nation, and they got big problems in Egypt, and they're being beat down, and they're slaves, and it's ugly. And Mo comes along and says, cut them loose. And Pharaoh says, no way. So they throw all these horrible things at him, and finally Pharaoh says, get him out of here. So Mo takes him down by the water, and of course then Pharaoh changes his mind, gets on his high horse with all his chariots and everything else, comes chasing after him because we got to get him back. And Mo turns to God and says, God, come on. And of course, at this point, the people are water in the back, right? Bum-ba-da, 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 bum-ba. There comes the chariots, right? And they don't have a sword amongst them. So here's like 1 million people. And here's all this flurry. And God, first thing he does is he puts a wall of fire in the daytime. And, he shuts those chariots off and just holds them back. And then he opens up the sea. And I don't know if you've ever seen, they got this movie out, and it's so cool because it's walls of water and whales it's like the Georgia Aquarium multiplied by 1 million, okay? And they're walking along, And think about it, they're walking on dry land. I don't know about you, I have seen things that, the water gets out of the way. When the water has been there, it is wet. When you try to move stuff through wet, I don't care, wet sand, wet dirt, whatever's on the bottom, it's hard. God just went, no, on second thought, let's make it dry. Let's really do this job right. So they went tooling across and to get to the other side. And of course, he lets Pharaoh come charging in and all the water comes down. No more Pharaoh. No problem behind you, folks. And they come out and God, they're getting out there and they're enjoying the food they packed in their bento boxes or whatever. And just, here we are, cool. And then they start running out of stuff. And they run out of water. And then their reaction is, oh God, what have you done to us? We're out here in the middle of nowhere. We don't have any way to live. You're a lousy God. Right? Just like us. I got $800 in the bank and $1,400 worth of bills, and I don't know what I'm going to do. God, what's your problem? Okay? And so anyhow, they're out there, and the problem is they've been told, look, God has this deal. He's got a place out there called the Promised Land. We're going to get over this desert. You're going to get to the other side, and it will be great. The problem is they started having problems. Just like us. Anybody who's had the good news preached to them, what does it say? Right? Number one, I'm a sinner. Gotcha. Check. I don't know anybody I haven't had to fight anybody on that one. Number two, Sin means death. Yeah, I can kind of see that. You know, you break the glass, the glass is broken. It doesn't matter whether it's one rock or 1,000, it's broke. We can't fix it. Jesus went to the cross and paid for the whole thing. So it's all there. However, it is accepted on an individual basis. So it says he offers to each one of us the opportunity to say, I know I'm a sinner. I know I can't fix it. I see that you've done this for me as God. I accept what you've done for me. It literally says you pay it on my account. And God says, good. We're done with the sin issue. Now let's step into your life and deal with all the rest of the stuff. You're going to heaven. You have a while yet to work things out. Now, I'm not going to argue the point as to whether or not every individual amongst the Israelites was what we would call a believer. I know this for sure. The picture is the Israelites are the people who are going to the land of promise. They are God's saved people. So that's good news. Used to be in slavery. Now we're not. God has saved us, but we got problems. And that was the problem. See, the problem is they kept going through there, and God had said, I have a rest ahead for you. I've got something good for you. And they kept going, yeah, but where's the water? Who's going to pay these bills? Why'd my car have to break down now? How could you possibly let my mother die that way? Who are you to tell me she can talk to me like that? Why can't you fix her, him, them? What is your problem anyway, God? I thought you were going to give me a good life. And God looked at him and he said, you know what, guys? We just can't do things this way. And he said, I got great things ahead, but I have no way of giving it to you because you're so horribly disobedient. And he says, and the deal was at that point, I always like to put it this way. The problem with disobedience is the reward. Right? All of those of us who have been parents, and even all those who haven't, know something. If a kid comes out there, goes into the grocery store, pulls the big Kit Kat bar off of the thing, right? I want it! And you take it out of their hand and you put it back on the shelf and they start going, well, okay, remember, right? You want me to do the whole dance? Everybody in the store is looking at you. The kid, I want it. Okay, and what do? You hand them the Kit Kat bar. Guess what happens the next time you go to the grocery store? Woo-hoo! I got the button. What do? I pitch a hissy fit. Now here's another one, okay? You want something a little bigger. I want a bicycle. No, give me a bicycle. You need to give me a bicycle. No, honey, we have to wait. We just don't have it right now. You don't love me. You don't love me. If you loved me, I'd have a bicycle. And you buy the bike. Now, we never do that, right? We don't do that in marriage. We never pull those cards on one another. Yeah, we do. I do. I still do. I'm a stinker. Let's just face it. Like I said, I got to deal with a mirror every morning. So what he's saying is, folks, I can't give it to you. Don't harden your heart. But then it goes on from there. Here's the next thing that we're getting to. So the first thing it says, he's saying this. If you can hear God, if you can listen to him, don't close your heart. Listen. Stop getting all wrapped up in your old self. Stop being so worried about whether or not you're going to get what you want. Slow down and listen. Boy, that came across pretty harsh. Look, just take it easy and listen. Okay, so then where do you go to from there? If Joshua had given them rest. Now, here's the next step. Okay, well then the picture is the whole generation of the group died right there in the wilderness. God said, fine guys, you ain't going to get it. The next generation went into the promised land. Wow. And the cool thing was, what God had done was he was driving out all these. Okay, anybody here ever going around and seen a house and you go, wow, that house. Or a car. Porsche 540 bi-turbo maybe. Right? And you go, wow, that is so cool. Ladies, did you see the necklace that gal had on? Wow. I mean, think of something like that. He's been promoted to CEO. Wow. Okay. And so they got that. They moved into a place where everything was done. The gardens were landscaped. The fields were tilled. They literally walked in and took possession. Here's your mansion. There's the keys. We'll leave them on the hook. Just walk in. Welcome to the promised land. They got it. So all the stuff was there. Woohoo! And notice what he says. If Joshua had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another day after that. There remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. He's saying, look, the rest that God is talking about did not come with the stuff. How many of us here have believed? And I'm actually going to ask you to raise your hand. If I only got that, my life would really be good. Would you please raise your hand if you felt that way? I'm going to embarrass a lot of people here, I know. Go ahead. If I only had that, right? If I only married her or him. If you had an if only in your life, go ahead. Right? And then there are people who are going, don't you do that. It's embarrassing. Okay. What's the deal? What's the deal? What you got didn't scratch the itch. What you got, when you got it, wasn't what you really wanted. And you begin to come to grips with what I want is beyond what I want. Doesn't that sound weird? Because if what I really needed had been the 540 bi-turbo, then I get into it, and I'm driving it, and I'm going, it's not what I thought it was going to be. I was going to get married, and it was going to be the most wonderful thing in my entire life, and everything was going to be great. And it would be like, the little frosty windows and Christmas in Maine and vacations in the Bahamas and all this kind of stuff. And you get married, and what is it? Good morning. Well, how are you this morning? I'm okay. I got to go to work. Okay, bye, honey. What is this? Marriage didn't do. Most of us are struggle through what we expected, what we thought should happen, and it didn't. It doesn't meet our need. And so what he's saying is, he says, the one who's entered into his rest has himself rested from his work as God did from his. If a person gets into God's rest, you rest. You actually are able to slow down. You actually rest from your works. And he said, therefore, let us be diligent to enter the rest so that no one will fall through following the same example of disobedience. See, the problem with disobedience is when we judge God. In other words, we're the guy sitting up in the judge thing, and we're bringing God into the court and saying, hey, you didn't do right. You didn't do what you're supposed to do. You didn't give me what I needed. You're not the God I thought you were. Or, I thought you loved me. And God says, wait a second. It's all wrong. You are not the boy behind the judge seat. The robes don't fit you, boy. You are the person out in the court. See, disobedience puts yourself in the judge seat. Obedience puts me out in the court. And so what he's saying now, here's what I'm going to ask you to do something which you may be tempted to do. Do not read after verse 13, okay? Don't read it. I may ask you again if you did it. Okay, don't read past 13. Here's what I want to, here is some verses that kept me terrified for 30 years of my Christian life. For the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword and piercing as far as the division of soul and spirit, of both joints and marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And there's no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are open and laid bare to the eyes of him with whom we have to do. And even worse, if you know what the picture is. The picture is when they would when a diviner who was trying to figure out the future would take an animal and slice him open and examine the inside to determine. Or a priest would try to determine if it's clean, and he would slice. And my picture of God was, oh, man. And I tried to be good. Man, did I try to be good. I worked really hard at it because after all, look at that. He slices and dices, folks. There is no, just a moment. Think of everything you have tried to hide up to now. Think of everything that if we threw it up on the screen for everybody to see, you would be horribly embarrassed. Think of all those things that, God willing, will never come out on the internet. Think of all those things you just go, oh, no, 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 no. Think of the things you didn't say. Think of the things you thought. Think of the things that if anybody actually knew, it would kill you. That's what I felt it was like. So what did you do? You just work as hard as you can to be good. Don't think that. Don't do that. Be good. Clean it. Spiff it. Keep it up. And it killed me. I don't know about you. That's hard. Right? Have you caught up with your Bible memory verses? Are you reading every day? Study, 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 study. I took 4 years of seminary. I worked in ministry for 20 years. And I was working hard. And it killed me. Because I didn't read the rest of the verses. See, I was all wrong. I was so absolutely phenomenally wrong that it almost destroyed my Christian life. I was a Christian. No question about that. But I was trying to be a Christian. Now, let me read the rest. So here's the thing. Again, just the promised land is what Israel didn't get. And God calls me to answer, but the problem is rest is in here. It's inside. It's not out there. As long as you're looking out there for something that makes in here rest, you'll never get it. That's a promise. Now listen to what he says. Therefore, God is now sliced and diced. God has laid you bare. He's seen the innermost, absolute, most rotten, terrible things you've always tried to hide. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. Hang on to Christ. Make sure that you're willing to let people know who you are. He says, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. What? He says, the one who has been tempted in all things as we are. What? You got to be kidding. And he said, and yet without sin. Put it this way. Your temptation will come at you up to the point that you fail. I don't know what it'd be. Maybe something you're reading. Maybe something you're watching. If you were to turn your phone over to me, it might be embarrassing. Maybe it's something you're thinking. Your temptation comes to a certain point. That glass hits the table, the whatever it is, the guy offers you the fill in the blank. And you give in. When you don't give in, the temptation gets stronger. And stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And if you never give in, you go through the greatest of all temptations. What does that mean? Let's walk it back. That means whatever it is that's my issue, he's been there. When he looks at you and says, I understand, it's because he understands. He doesn't go, what? He says, yeah, I hear you. Boy, that's hard. It hurts. So what do we do? What in the world do we do now? And he says, therefore, let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace. Jesus is sitting up there, and the words across his throne are grace. Amazing grace. He doesn't say, thumbs down, send him to the executioner. He says, thumbs up. I cover you with my grace. And he says that you may receive mercy and find grace in time of need. I don't know about you. That's constant. That's always. I need. And look, we were talking this morning, and this is one of the things that we got started talking about. The whole thing about this washing feet and humility and what are we doing and why, and the fact that it applies to the body of Christ. And the reason is this. When Jesus went to wash the feet of the disciples, the two verses that introduces says, knowing where he had come from and knowing where he was going, he picked up a towel and girded himself, which means he shucked his outer garments, got down to his undies, in whatever form they were at that time, and put on this long towel that he's going to use to wash feet with. He got himself a slave. In other words, it didn't bother him to be reduced to the lowest, most embarrassing level of service because he knew who he was. If you are the CEO of the company, doing janitorial service is in no way embarrassing. I own the sucker. Okay, I always like this, undercover boss. Well, you always know the guy's going back to the office, Big deal, dude. You spent 2 weeks out there acting like you was working. I gotta work. When you got over it, you didn't stay in that lousy motel room. You went back to your multi-million-dollar mansion, man. When I clock in and clock out, I get my $800 paycheck. So don't tell me how hard you worked, right? The big boss has it all. He can afford to. Do you know what? If you truly understand what he's saying, there is nothing that's embarrassing. Nothing. Drug addict? You bet. Problems with porn? That's me. Beat your wife? In there. Steal? Oh, yeah. Jail time? Because Jesus has redeemed me. And he forgives me. And he wraps his arm around me and he says, I give you my mercy to forgive you. Mercy takes care of the stuff. Grace is the good stuff to come. Divorced? Runaway? Doesn't matter. Jesus is saying, hey, I love you. And it's all taken care of. We approach the throne of grace not with fear and trembling. Do you know what I'm talking? We approach it with confidence. Hey, Jesus, we're here together. He says, you bet. I got a little more mercy and grace to pour out on you. Come on in. And we can't believe it. But it's true. Now, when we start living like that, suddenly I can get out of... See, my problem is me. Suddenly me is not such a big deal anymore. So what? So you find out I got problems. I got problems. Okay. Jesus took care of that. I'm working through it. And now I can go to you and say, I've been watching. You look, it seems like life is a little on the lonely side these days, or there's a lot of anger. There's something going on. Wow, when you come right down to it. Great. Or maybe
I've been looking at your business. It seems to be doing pretty bad. I mean, what's going on? Oh, my business is, and you go, some guys may go, good, I'll pray for you. God, that may be the best they can do. Some people may go, hey, let me give you a hand. Some people may say, let's reanalyze your business and put it on track. Some people may say, let's get the help you need. I love the story. Yeah, I just barely got time. I love the story of the church in New York that took over a property for a parking lot. And it just turned out just the other side of the parking lot, the property they purchased, there was this lady living in a little tenement thing with 2 boys. And she was impoverished. So the deacons looking at the whole thing, they decided to help her. Okay. And they said, well, what does she need? Well, obviously she's poor. So let's just give her some money. So he gave her, I forget, $3,000, $1,000, right? So then all of a sudden they find out that the lady spent the money. She paid some bills, but then she bought bikes for her children. And they went to a fancy restaurant. They go, what? She's wasting that money. What in the world? We can't keep doing this. We can't give money away, throw money away like that. And then the pastor, who happens to be a really smart guy, he's gone now, he's named Keller. Philip Keller? Anyhow, he says to him, wait a second, before we start doing this, why don't we go meet with her and find out what's going on? Okay. So they get down and they sit down with the lady. So the deacon goes over and sits down and talks to her. She says, we sent some money, just want to find out. She says, look, my boys have had to walk over a mile to school. All the other kids have bikes. It's a bad neighborhood. They need to get through there quickly. And so we just never had the money for bikes. And so I felt like I needed to get them bikes. And they're so glad. I mean, it's so incredible. And she says, we have never eaten out at a restaurant. The best we've ever had is fast food. They've literally never gone to a place where you sit down and people bring you food. And she said, I wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to actually go to a restaurant and have that experience. And the guys went back and reported the deacon board, and then the deacon board said, wait, let's do this instead. So they went back and they counseled her, and they found out she needed job skills and she needed references, and they started working with her. And they ended up getting her some education. They ended up getting her some connections. They found a new place where she could live, and they put the whole thing together. They washed her feet. They saw what her need was, and they did what was necessary. Now, like I said, for some people, here's the thing. Washing feet means washing feet. It is not I see, I understand. Now I know. It means getting in there and doing what needs to be done. Now, wait for God to call you. Just don't go running around tearing shoes off, okay? Let God be the motivator. But it's saying He's involved. He is the one who will move you. And you will be astonished. And like it says in Peter, He will exalt you. Jesus was in the most exalted position in the entire world while He was washing feet. I don't know how He's going to do it. Maybe be internally. Maybe you will become CEO. I don't know. But He will put you on high and you will be delighted. So the thing that I'm seeing here is the throne of Jesus is grace. Please hear that. He slices and dices so that He can minister to us. He exposes the things we keep trying to hide so He can go, that's where the problem is. Let's deal with it. And if we are willing, we will open the door and He will come in and He will do what needs to be done. Maybe through some friends. Maybe through some professional help, maybe through a loan, maybe through a gift. I don't know, but He'll do it. So rest is full trust in Jesus. Full time. It is fully relaxing, no matter what's coming, because I know who's in charge, and I know who I am. I love the little picture. I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to do this and then read something to you. Remember Peter? Remember when Jesus took the boys out in the boat? They were going to cross the lake, right? First time out. All right, boys, let's get in the boat and go to the... Okay. And you remember what happened?
Huge storm comes up, right? And these fishermen, professional lake boys, are screaming their guts out. Ah! Little girls, what is going on? We're going to die. What was Jesus doing? He's sleeping. And so finally Jesus. He says, what? We're going to die. Just a minute. Storm, stop. He was sleeping. Why? Because he knew who had the storm. He knew they were going to make it. They didn't. And then he said, oh, you of little faith. Just trust God. Now I never put this together before, but a lot of you don't know in Acts early on, they had beheaded James and they put Jesus in prison. Peter in prison, put Peter in prison and getting ready to execute him the next day. So he's in prison, waiting to get killed. God sends an angel. He finds Peter. Guess what Peter's doing? Sleeping. He learned. Hey, God, kill me if you want, I go to heaven. God said no. In fact, the angel had to kick him awake. Get up! It's cool. It's a cool scene. But Peter was so confident that God was in charge no matter what happened, despite the threats and the circumstances, that he just went to sleep. Okay, this is Communion Sunday. Let me suggest to you that, now here's the final little note, and then I'm going to read this. Do you know what? These messages are directed to believers in Jesus Christ in a church. Let me say those two things. I know we have people out on the internet, and I know we love you, and we really want to see you and all that, but this doesn't happen out there. I don't get to see your face. I don't know what you're looking like. Because you will say, how are you doing? Fine. And I go, wait a second. How are you really doing? And if I don't see your face, we all have an internet presence, right? It's a lie. But I don't know you. So, you need to build a body. Now, here's the second thing. When we do this, people will walk in from the outside and go, wow. The greatest need in a disconnected community that's addicted to the cell phone is us. People who care. People who are involved. People who, why are there so many suicides? Because nobody cares. Let me read this. This is based on a song we all know. O come, all you unfaithful. O come, all you unfaithful. Come, weak and unstable. Come, know you're not alone. O come, barren and waiting ones, weary of praying. Come, see what your God has done. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. Oh, come, bitter and broken. Come with fears unspoken. Come, taste of his perfect love. Oh, come, guilty and hurting ones. There's no need to run. See what your God has done. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. He's the Lamb who was given, slain for our pardon. His promise is peace for those who believe. He's the Lamb who was given, slain for our pardon. His promise is peace for those who believe. So come, though you have nothing, come. He is the offering. Come, see what your God has done. When we take communion, it's funny. We have a term called the offering. You know what it means. Whip out your wallet. This is the offering. This is what God offers us. And we bring nothing. We just accept it. Let's pray. Father, I thank you. Man, right now there are people, we were talking about people who have been raised on the device that takes all of their attention. And they literally don't know how to connect with the people around them. Whole families sitting around restaurant tables, focused on their phones. We need people who care. We need people who connect. We need people who see deeply, who understand need.
and who are willing to do the work that's necessary to meet those needs. It's called the church. You will provide, you will motivate, you will do what needs to be done as we lay ourselves into your hands and simply obey. Help us, Lord, to trust you through it all and find it's a blast. Hey, when you're in charge, it's all rest. It's all easy. It doesn't matter. Let the storm blow. I got you. In Jesus' name.